When I was a business school professor, specifically when I was teaching at the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California, I started to notice a really interesting trend. It was surprising. And I think it's partly generational because of the way that kids were growing up. I think that it may partly be a reflection of how people just simply interact with each other. But this was in the years 2015, 2019. I started noticing that where in the past, when I would ask questions, there would always be a couple of people who'd raise their hand and give an answer. And most of the students would sit quietly, and I would have to randomly call on people to get them to give answers to hear from them. There would be people who'd be shy. They might be concerned. They may not know what they're talking about and may not give the right answer. And that had always been sort of what had gone on. And all of a sudden, everybody's hands started going up. And everybody would start giving answers. And it was not that I was asking easier questions. The questions were approximately the same as before. And it's not that my students had suddenly become more knowledgeable, but rather the level of reticence about being understood to have made a mistake and spoken out knowledgeably, apparently, about that mistaken belief, that mistaken understanding, seemed apparently to become less embarrassing, less concerning to these students. And so it was really interesting. I'd start getting people raising their hands who would give me complete BS answers because they didn't know, they didn't understand, they were totally off track, whatever it was. And in a classroom environment, it's okay. I want people to learn. I want people to recognize the errors in the way that they're thinking about things. And I think actually probably I want that generally. But it became to the point, and this was not a single classroom. This was across years that I started seeing this increasingly and increasingly. People were unembarrassed to say stupid shit. And that's about the only way that I can explain it. Well, this has spread far and wide outside the classroom. There are a lot of people out there who are perfectly fine saying stupid shit in public, on video, in podcasts, wherever, and they've got no concern about how stupid they sound. Well, unfortunately, this manifests itself increasingly across all walks of life, and it's become problematic because people are putting out information, making statements, not just answering questions, but making affirmative statements about things they don't know anything. And they're often completely wrong. Well, we're seeing that in videos and podcasts and news articles about the real estate market here in Las Vegas. So let's actually look at what's really going on, because it's not a disaster. It's not a crash. The place is not burning to the ground. Las Vegas real estate is actually strong, and it's getting stronger. So let's go ahead and dive in. This is the February 2023 real estate market update for resale, condos, and townhomes here in the Las Vegas Valley. I am Justin Miller, co-founder and principal at the Chong Miller Group. At the Chong Miller Group, we help people build wealth through real estate. We help people buy and sell homes, including condos and townhomes here in the Las Vegas Valley. So let's go ahead and actually start to look at real numbers instead of the BS that's being bandied about by people who want to have really creative thumbnails that are scary and saying stupid shit because they don't get embarrassed by it. And by the way, if you're getting scared listening to some of the stuff out there, I can understand why. There's a lot of really bleak, negative, horrendously bad commentary out there that would scare most people. I don't know why people want to engage in this. It's kind of like, why does the news cover disasters? Because more people watch. Apparently being super negative and making things incredibly graphically horrible draws viewers. And so there's a lot of people out there who just simply want to draw viewers because they're looking for infamy or something. I don't know. Condos. Let's look at condos first. And let's talk about what's actually happening in the condo market here in Las Vegas at the beginning of 2023. This is data that was pulled on February 7th. This is data for the month of January that we're looking at, January of 2023. We do month-over-month comparison, so December 2022 to January 2023. We do year-over-year comparisons, January 22 to January 23. Let me caution you, year-over-year comparisons this year are going to be weird because the beginning half of 2022 was very strong. The back half of 2022 was very, relatively speaking, weak. And so we're going to see hard comparisons at the beginning of this year. We're going to see super easy comparisons at the end of this year. So the annual comparisons are going to be more challenging in an interpretive sense. So I'm going to say let's look more specifically at month over month, and then we'll try to parcel out some issue of seasonality without a lot of effort being put into the year-over-year comparisons. I just will mention them so that you understand where they come from and hear what they are for symmetry purposes, but I'll caution you about relying on year-over-year data, comparative data this year. Price, condos, $215,000. That's a median sale that actually took place, right? Not median list price. These are the sales that actually occurred, took place in a median of $215,000. Now, that's kind of nice, right? The median in December of 2022 was $210,000, which means we're up 2.4%, $5,000, 2.4% from December through the end of January. There's no disaster. There's no crashing prices. The place isn't burning down. Condo prices went up a very healthy, very respectable $5,000 or 2.4%. If we continued that through the year, we would end up being up by 25% for the year. Now, I'm not making that prediction. I'm just telling you how big that increase was if you annualize that kind of return, just to make sure you understand. This is a really healthy increase in median sale price for condos. So yes, we did see condo prices come down in the second half of 2022. Those prices never crashed. They corrected. They were down. I have not figured out the specific percentage, but they came down something in the 11 to 12% range in the second half of last year. Now, we are actually up from where we started last year. Condo prices at the end of January 2022, median $214,900. So we're up $100. That's not a lot, but we have kind of locked in all the gains of 2020, all the gains of 2021, and we're actually up from where we started 2022. Now, we saw really big appreciation in the front half of 2022, so we may go down on a year-over-year comparison as we go further into this year, but I anticipate prices will continue to be increasing, even if not quite at the same very rapid pace that we saw in the first half of last year. Okay, so we're up 0%, we're up $100 from where we ended January of 2023. Now, I will point out, in comparison to single-family residential, just to give us a comparison point, single-family residential year over year at the end of January was down 3.1%. We're flat year over year for condos, and we're up 2.4% month over month. There's no disaster here, nothing bad to see. This is all fantastic news. And in fact, single family is also up month over month, not as steeply. Single family housing was up 1.1% month over month. We'll see that with townhomes as well. All market segments, prices increased month over month. And multifamily prices increased year over year. So what about units sold? Units sold still under significant pressure. 213 condos sold in January 2023. That is down 4.5% from the 223 or 10 more that sold in December of 2022. There's only, interestingly, we are so low right now, actually. There's only 1 month of the pandemic that we saw that happened when the economy was closed, where sales were lower. So definitely a weak number of closed sales. This is down a lot from last year. Remember last year, first half of the year, very strong. So comparisons year over year, very weird looking this year, but we're down 57.9% from the 506 that we saw last year. Now, let me make one other point about how slow this market was in January of 2023. There's actually only 1 month, it's the pandemic month, that's been lower since June 2008. So unquestionably slow number of sales. But that makes that median sale price all that much more interesting, because of the 213 condos that sold, the median price was $215,000. So it's not pulling prices down, actually prices went up, even in these low volume environment. Okay, so prices are not crashing, even though volume has come down really considerably. It has, legitimately, really considerably. It's taking longer to sell if you're a seller. There's more to look at if you're a buyer. You've got some time that you can take to make decisions as a buyer. At least through January, things are going to start to shift and become faster in this market as we go forward in time. Now, what about inventory? Because there are a lot of people out there talking about how amazingly high inventory has gotten. 827 condos for sale at the end of January 2023. That's down. It's down 11.5% from the 934 condos for sale at the end of December. So inventory is coming down, right? Inventory has been coming down for months. There's a strong downtrend in place in number of condos that are for sale. Now, certainly sales volume or sold volume rather has been coming down as well, but inventory has been coming down, and inventory has actually been coming down more quickly than sales volume. We are up, of course, from where we were at the end of January of 2022, 448, we're up 84.6%. There are people out there who are using these year-over-year growth in inventory numbers to create some level of panic. Well, we're almost double in inventory. And then there are some people who are actually writing this in a way which is actually improper and misleading by saying that a doubling is an increase of over 200%. A doubling is actually taking something from, let's say, 10 to 20. That's a doubling. It's an increase of 100%. It's not an increase of 200%. So there's a lot of misinformation, mispresentation of the bad information that's being given, and a lack of qualified statements about what the information means. Last year, we had very low levels of inventory, as we had throughout 2021 and as we had through much of 2020. And so we're seeing now inventory levels that are higher. We started seeing that in the second half of 2022. But we're on only 55% of normal inventory for condos in this market. less than half, well, just over half of the level of inventory that we would expect to be seeing in this market. We actually are at very low inventory levels in this market. And that inventory is decreasing. We're down 11.5% month over month. Now, of course, we get newly listed resale condos coming into the market to be sold. That number last month, 369, that is up what seems like a very strong 34.7% from 274 in December. Of course, December is the slowest month of the year for newly listed. Every single year, if you look at the new list volume chart, you see this big negative peak going down every December. So this number seems strong because we're up a lot, but kind of interestingly, we're actually down 12.7% from the newly listed resale condos in January of 2022. We're down 12.7% from the 423 at that time. So we're actually way below normal for newly listed into market resale condos from what we would normally be expecting. And by the way, this is the first up month in newly listed since June of 2022. So we're maybe starting to see a little bit coming into this market for sale, but inventory is still coming down even with this increase, this first increase in newly listed that we've seen in half a year. So that means that the number of units for sale, low. Things are selling, but at a slow pace, and they're selling at increasing prices, not decreasing prices. Now, one other statistic for condos, 99 condos that had gone into contract came back on market. They fell out of contract and came back on market. That is 31.7% of all condos that had gone into contract for sale. Buyer and seller agreed, signed a contract. Contract is there, escrow is opened. 31.7% of those failed. That's up. It's up from the prior month, which was 27.7% in December of 2022. This is the first increase we've seen in back on market or contract failings in the resale market for condos in several months. That number had been trending down very slowly through the back half of 2022. That number has just bounced higher by 4%, from 27.7 up to 31.7 now. That's a large number of failures. That's actually about double, a little more than double of what we would normally see for back on market, normally meaning in a normally functioning market. This market is still highly challenged. It's highly challenged because of the kinds of issues we talked about in all of my prior market updates. Bad appraisals, problems around inspections, increasing interest rates causing people to not qualify for what their pre-approval letter had indicated they could qualify for, those kinds of issues. So pay attention to this when you get into a contract. You want to make sure you're protecting yourself as a buyer and as a seller about contract failures. This number is definitely elevated. It's more than twice what we would expect in a normally functioning market. Now, again, I am Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group. Please smash the like button, subscribe if you've not already, hit the notification bell, and now let's change our focus and look at townhomes, the other segment of the multifamily segment here in the Las Vegas Valley. Now, I segregate townhomes from condos because they are literally distinct populations of housing units. Even though everywhere else you see townhomes and condos combined, they are not the same thing. They move in different manners, some months, and so we need to segregate those from each other in order to be able to analyze each of those two categories properly so that you understand what's actually going on in the market. If you're looking at multifamily residential, which are condos or townhomes, You know which category you may prefer to buy in, or you know what you've already got and you want to sell. You want the valid comparative data between you and the market. And so that's why I segregate these two categories. They are separate populations, and so let's look at townhomes now. First, price. Townhome median sale price in January of 2023, $316,500. Now I'll just point out for a second that's $101,500 more than the median price on condos. That already should convince anyone these are separate categories of housing types. For some reason, it does not convince everybody, but it is. $316,500. That is up. It is up $4,050 or 1.3% from the number in December of 2022, $312,450. It's actually the second month of increase, because December had gone up in the townhome category. December had gone up relative to November. It was the only category of housing type that had shown an increase in December. So we've got 2 months in now of increasing prices on townhomes. We are up from January of 2022, we are up $12,250 from $304,250. We're up 4.0%. In condos, we were up $100. We were flat from January, the end of January of 2022. In single family housing, we were down 3.1% year over year, end of January to end of January. And in the townhome space, we are up 4.0% year over year, end of January to end of January. So different category of housing, and we're seeing different pricing trends in townhomes than we're seeing in the other categories of housing. However, all three categories are now showing, at least month over month, increases in pricing. In townhomes, we've likely hit the bottom for pricing for the next 12 months, probably for the next couple of years, in November of 2022. In condos, in single family houses, we may wobble around here in February and March before we start to see significant gains, or we may have just been putting in the bottom of the pricing in December of 2022 for these two categories of housing. We'll find out as we go forward. A townhome pricing model, though, strong. All right, what about number of townhomes sold? This is down, it's 144, it's down 5.3% from the 152 that we saw sold in December of 2022. We're way down, we're down 49.3% from the 284 that we saw sold in January of 2022. Remember, year over year comparisons are going to look really weird. Actually, all year, they're going to look really weak in the first half of the year, really strong in the second half of the year. I recommend you take all year over year comparisons in 2023 with a significant grain of salt. And you need an explanation about why they look like what they do. They look like what they do because 2022 started with very strong numbers, because it was a continuation of what we'd seen in 2021 and much of 2020. Very strong sales. 2021, remember, was record sales volume. 2022 started just as strong and then peaked, and second half of the year looked very weak. So anyhow, 144 units sold. This is the lowest since February 2009. Definitely a low number. This is actually below the pandemic low in the townhome space. So very weak number, which makes the price all that more interesting, because even with this very weak volume number, prices were up. Prices were up month over month. They've been up for the past 2 months, and they're up 4.0% from where they were at this time last year. So weak volume sales volume is not pulling prices down in the townhome space. Weak volume is not pulling prices down in the condo space any longer, right? We did see prices come down in the back half of 2022 for all categories of housing type, not crashing, decreases that were a correction in nature, so considerably less than 15%, much less than crashing, which is like a 20% or more drop. We're seeing prices come down something in the 10, 12% range last year. We're not going to see that this year. Go look at my forecast video where I talk about what I think is going to be happening. We're putting in floors under volume as well as prices in the first quarter. We'll see the second quarter be a turnaround, and we'll be going up strongly in the third and fourth quarter this year. What about for sale, right? This is inventory, because if it's not listed in inventory, it's really hard to sell. Can happen occasionally, but it's really hard to sell. We need inventory to be able to have product that can be sold. 548 townhomes, resale townhomes sitting in inventory waiting for offers. That's down. It's down 16.6% from the 657 townhomes sitting in inventory at the end of December of 2022. So a strong downtrend in place. Inventory is falling. As inventory falls, there's less supply for buyers to look at and make offers on. We need inventory, and inventory is coming down. We are sitting at about 55% of normal inventory. From the extremely constrained inventory where we were sitting at the end of January of 2022, we are up 93% from 284. That was astoundingly low inventory. Record low inventory numbers were being put in throughout 2021 and the first portion of 2022 in the townhome space. So comparisons year over year, again, weird and misleading. We're at 55% of normal inventory. That's what you need to be thinking about. And inventory came down in January. That's the other thing you need to be thinking about. Came down not just one or two townhomes, it came down 16.6%. What about newly listed resale townhomes? 239. It's up. It's up a healthy 37.4% from the 174 that we saw listed in December. But this is the first increase in newly listed we've seen since August of 2022. So we also are sitting at the lowest non-December number since May 2009 for newly listed. Again, as I'd said, when talking about condos, if we look at newly listed, we see this negative peak, this nadir point every December, that we get the lowest numbers that we see every year. We're at the lowest non-December number since May of 2009. We're just really low, both on inventory and on newly listed. We are down 26.0% from the newly listed townhomes that we saw in January of 2022, which means that while we're building new listings, which helps inventory, our inventory numbers are not going to be increasing like we started to see in 2022 because we were getting a lot of new listings coming in. We're getting new listings that are 26% lower than what they were last year at this time, at the end of January. Very constrained inventory, new listings coming in below normal, 55% of normal on the inventory level. Slow sales, but sales seem to be picking up and prices are going up in the townhome space. A generally consistent story with different levels of magnitude in the condo space. And in fact, generally consistent to what we were seeing in the single family space as well, if you go look at the single family resale video. Now, back on market, 71 townhomes came back on market in January, meaning their contract failed. That is 33%, is literally a third of all contracts that were written came back into the market, and that is an increase from the 30.9% that we had seen in December. Interestingly, December in the townhome space was also up for back on market. So we've seen 2 months where that small downtrend in contract failings had been in place. We've seen 2 months where that's reversed, and we have increasing back on market contract failures. Why have we seen that for 2 months in townhomes? We only saw it for 1 month in condos and 1 month in single family homes. Probably because we've seen price increases in townhomes for 2 months. So what that suggests is that actually some significant portion of the increases we're seeing in back on market numbers are coming from bad appraisals. As prices have reversed and started to go back up, appraisers are behind in their understanding. Maybe they're listening to way too much of the horrible commentary out there about how terribly depressing everything is and how everyone should be scared and running away. In reality, prices are going up because that's what buyers and sellers are negotiating. And when appraisers do not recognize and accommodate that in the appraisals they're writing, they create problems in the contracts. And those appraisals that come in low can cause contract failures. Make sure you're working with a real estate agent, whether you're a buyer or a seller, who understands what's actually going on in the market, who understands how to deal with appraisal issues proactively and reactively, how to deal with inspection issues proactively and reactively in order to help make sure the contracts that you get into do not collapse, because a failed contract is bad for everyone involved. Seller has to start over or completely reevaluate. Buyer has to start over and maybe pull out of the market entirely while they lick their wounds and figure out what's going on. The only people who benefit from bad appraisers are appraisers. And I don't say that because appraisers are bad people. I say that because appraisers have the wrong incentives because of regulation. And I'm not against regulation at all, but there's bad regulation that came into the marketplace about the appraisal process. And those regulations cause appraisers to get paid regardless of how well they do their job. So they're the only ones who manage to benefit from bad appraisals. The banks don't get a good deal if a contract falls apart. Seller doesn't, buyer doesn't, agents don't. Only appraisers are whole as they engage in bad appraisal processes. Now, there are some great appraisers out there who try to do a really good job. Unfortunately, there are some, they're just cashing a paycheck. And they're listening to YouTube and podcasts and getting really depressed about how things are going. And so they're not doing good jobs. We want to make sure that we know how to deal with that issue. So I am Justin Miller. Again, I'm the principal and co-founder for the Chong Miller Group. We help people build wealth through real estate. We help people buy and sell homes, including condos and townhomes. If you'd like to talk to us, if you'd like our help, please reach out. I'd love to talk with you, see what we can do to help you with your real estate adventures. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.